the gash that grew with every retelling. What you may not know, that $1.8 million contract ballooned to a $14 million no-bid giveaway to Trump's preferred contractors, including a Palm Beach neighbor who has twice pled guilty to federal bribery and campaign finance violations. Same at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. Last October, I wrote to President Trump regarding his illegal demolition of the East Wing for his Thank you, Ranking Members Blumenthal and Garcia, for convening us here today to discuss monumental waste. If you want to see monumental waste, look no further than the Kennedy Center. Beginning last summer, whistleblowers came to me with documents showing that after President Trump had declared himself chairman, his hand-picked leadership team let FIFA occupy the entire campus for 3 weeks for a grand total of $0. Zero. That gift cost the center over $5 million in lost revenue, but it let the president hang a made-up FIFA Peace Prize around his neck. Invoices and receipts also showed a pattern of unprecedented spending on staff meals, jobs going to Trump world family and friends with no qualifications, and long-term stays at the ritzy Watergate Hotel for their new hires. So as ranking member of the Environment Public Works Committee and ex officio member of the Center's board, I launched an investigation into the management of the Kennedy Center's finances. Since last November, more whistleblowers have come forward with documents that demonstrate even more corruption and self-dealing, from multiple no-bid contracts going to preferred contractors, to rushed jobs that need to be redone, to management telling staff to do whatever it takes and not to worry about the repercussions because we'll deal with the lawsuits later. And to what end? All this waste occurred in the service of gratifying the president's monumental ego. That meant delivering for him 2 dates, December 5th, when he'd take to the stage to accept his phony baloney Peace Prize, and December 7th, when he'd take the stage again as the self-appointed host of the Kennedy Center Honors. The columns rusting through fresh paint, the reflecting pool that may now have to be rebuilt, Trump's name appearing on the building less than 12 hours after an illegal board vote. None of this is an accident. Everything was rushed to make sure the monuments looked the way the president wanted. And now Americans are left to foot the bill for the shoddy work itself and for the still needed repairs never properly done. My fellow ex officio member, Representative Joyce Beatty, is here. She filed the lawsuit that forced President Trump's name off of President Kennedy's memorial, restored the statutory voting rights of ex officio members, and halted a complete closure of the entire center that looked more like a cover-up for their inability to run the place. So my work on the Kennedy Center continues, and I encourage all those with information to keep coming forward. My staff remains ready to meet with anyone in confidence and at your convenience. I'll also recognize that Norm Eisen, who was Joyce Beatty's lawyer in that matter, is here as well. So you guys are backstopped in that. As a ranking member of EPW with jurisdiction over public buildings, I'd be remiss not to mention other victims to the Trump cavalcade of corruption. You know the Lincoln Memorial reflecting pool story, the peeling paint, the made-up claims of vandalism, the gash that grew with every retelling. What you may not know, that $1.8 million contract ballooned to a $14 million no-bid giveaway to Trump's preferred contractors, including a Palm Beach neighbor who has twice pled guilty to federal bribery and campaign finance violations. Same at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. Last October, I wrote to President Trump regarding his illegal demolition of the East Wing for his vanity ballroom. First promised at $200 million in private donations, its cost has now more than tripled, including a defeated attempt to fleece taxpayers out of $1 billion. Ranking Member Garcia and I led an amicus brief urging the court to stop construction of the $1 billion ballroom without congressional approval. And now turns out there's more. The Washington Post has since reported that the White House awarded a $500 million no-bid contract routed through the executive residence. Conveniently, the place exempt from federal rules requiring competitive bidding. The Trump motto, don't like the rules, break them. Manufactured vandalism, bulldozed buildings, no-bid contracts. None of this is happening in isolation, and none of it's really about paint and plaster. It's a story of cronyism, corruption, and contempt for anyone who engages in oversight. It's the deliberate hollowing out of American institutions that are supposed to outlast any one man until there's nothing left of them but the name on the door. Or, if you don't like that name, just a tarp to cover it up. Thank you very much to both of our co-chairs.
Thanks.
Senator Murray.
Thank you, Chair Collins. Secretary Hegseth, your department received $150 billion last year in the Republicans' Big Beautiful Bill. It also received a record $839 billion for fiscal year 2026, more money than you asked for last year. Combined, that is $1 trillion budget for the year, and as I already mentioned, your department has yet to spend half of the reconciliation funds. And despite that, you are here today asking for tens of billions of dollars more for things that you've already asked for in your FY27 request or that have nothing to do with Iran. This administration has tried to sell this as an emergency request, but it may be better understood as an attempt to skirt the normal appropriations process. Here are just a few of the things requested in this Iran supplemental. $800 million for the National Guard to patrol D.C. even longer. Over $1 billion for the Army to patrol the southern border, which is DHS's job. $900 million to support the administration's illegal boat strikes in the Caribbean. Over $18 billion for munitions, which you've already requested in your FY27 budget request. And $1.7 billion to pay for your decision to recruit more people than the services need, which was not contemplated by the FY26 funding bill Congress recently passed. Now, you've already submitted a reprogramming request on this that our subcommittee is considering now, which really underscores the point I made in my opening remarks that the problem is not a lack of money, but poor planning. So I'll be blunt. The truth is your request does not make a lot of sense. So let me ask you a simple question. Why exactly are billions of dollars more for the National Guard and this administration's illegal strikes in the Caribbean urgently needed for the Iran war?
Well, Senator, I wouldn't, of course, agree with your characterization, but why this kind of spending is needed is because of the gross negligence and neglect of the Biden administration inside our department. Ran it like a bureaucracy, abandoned our strength posture around the world, so we're having to reestablish deterrence. You mentioned the end strength numbers, and I will acknowledge that we are ahead of schedule on end strength in recruiting. 8,000 in the Navy, 6,000 in the Army, 4,000 in the Air Force. Because under President Trump, there's been record and historic over 30-year recruiting records inside our department since he won the election because the American people didn't want to sign up for what Joe Biden was providing our military.
Well, let me
and they want to sign up for what President Trump is doing in his leadership. And so those are good problems to have that we need to fund and a reflection of momentum. And this budget will allow us to continue the kind of momentum that gets us ahead.
My point is that a lot of this request does not feel like an emergency. And let me move on. Secretary Hegseth, like most Americans, I've had a lot of trouble following this administration's contradictory statements about the war. On April 8th, you said, and I quote, "Their missile program is functionally destroyed, launchers, production facilities, and existing stockpiles depleted and decimated and almost completely ineffective." Mr. Secretary, Iran has been firing at U.S. military bases in the region and its ships for the last week. How is it possible, if their capabilities were, quote, functionally destroyed 3 months earlier, as she claimed, for them to be doing this now?
Well, Senator, Iran is at the weakest point militarily it has ever been in the past decade, certainly maybe in 47 years, as they've gathered effectively a terror army. And that terror army was built to try to create conventional capabilities to defend against a pursuit of nuclear weapons, which meant thousands of ballistic missiles, many of which we have destroyed, others of which they have put inside facilities and hidden in underground facilities. And that's what terror regimes would do. So I acknowledge
clearly.
they still have capabilities, no doubt. But the amount of damage that we've done to them over the course of these series of operations has put them in the worst place they've ever
Okay,
been.
well, let me move on. On May 5th, you claimed that Iran doesn't control the strait, and you said that there was a, quote, powerful red, white, and blue dome over the strait. If that was true, how did Iran shrink ship traffic in the strait to a trickle again last week?
We pushed almost, I believe, between 400 and 500 million barrels of oil under the nose of Iran over the course of Project Freedom, which went underground, which I acknowledged after we did so covertly because it was more effective to do so quietly than to do so publicly. So we've been in control of moving traffic through there for quite some time. Will they
but it
retain the
has
ability to recklessly shoot at commercial shipping? And that's what happened. We had a ceasefire, and then they shot at commercial shipping
Well, you
recklessly
also
as a state.
said at
That's
that
what changed it.
same press conference, and I'm going to quote you, you urged Iran to, quote, let innocent ships pass freely. These international waters belong to all nations, not to Iran to tax, toll, or control. Last week, President Trump said the U.S. would charge a 20% toll to each ship to pass through the state. So based on your opposition to tolls, did you talk to the president out of that idea, or did someone else?
Iran's not charging tolls, and they're shooting at ships right now.
But Trump said that he wanted to charge a 20% toll.
We have a blockade right now of all Iranian ships and Iranian ports,
Didn't answer
and
the question.
it's effective.
My time is out.